The gravel crunched beneath the tires of the old sedan as it rolled up the long driveway, winding past gnarled oak trees whose bare branches scraped the sky like skeletal fingers. 7-year-old Lily pressed her small hands against the car window, watching the familiar world of her suburban neighborhood fade into the quiet, open stretches of farmland. She had been looking forward to visiting her grandfather Harold, but a strange flutter of unease had been settling in her chest ever since they turned onto the narrow lane leading to his farmhouse. "Almost there, sweetie," her mother said, glancing at her from the passenger seat. Her eyes were warm but tense, as if she too sensed something about the house. Lily nodded silently, feeling her stomach tighten. The farmhouse came into view, a 2-story building of weathered grey wood, its paint chipped and faded with age. Windows glinted in the late afternoon sun, reflecting the sprawling fields that stretched in every direction. A tall, locked basement door, visible just at the side of the house, seemed oddly out of place, darker than the rest of the structure, almost as if it had absorbed the shadows themselves. "Grandpa! Grandpa!" Lily called as she hopped out of the car, her small shoes crunching over gravel. She ran ahead, her little ponytail bouncing, only slowing when she reached the wide wooden porch. Harold was there, leaning slightly on his cane, his wiry frame bent with age, but his eyes sparkled behind gold-rimmed glasses. "Lily!" he exclaimed, his voice breaking into a chuckle. He scooped her into his arms, lifting her high so her feet kicked at the air. "You're getting bigger every time I see you." Lily laughed, but the laughter felt hollow in her own ears. Her gaze flicked to the side toward the basement door, and she shivered. "Grandpa," she said cautiously, "why's that door always locked?" Harold glanced over his shoulder and let out a soft laugh. "Ah, that old thing. Just some storage, nothing to worry about. You're not planning on exploring the basement tonight, are you?" Lily shook her head, but the unease lingered. There was something about the door, something heavy, almost alive. Even in the sunlight, it seemed darker than the rest of the house, as though it had secrets it didn't want anyone to know. Inside, the farmhouse smelled faintly of wood polish and old books. Dust motes floated in the slanting light, drifting lazily from the open windows. The rooms were cozy but worn. The furniture was sturdy but scarred with years of use. Lily wandered slowly, running her fingers along the edge of a carved wooden table and brushing the spines of old books on a shelf. Each creak of the floorboards made her heart jump. "Come on, sweetie," Harold said, guiding her gently by the hand. "We need to unpack your things before dinner." Lily did as he said, but her eyes kept darting toward the basement door. There was a weight to it she couldn't explain, a quiet insistence that something or someone was behind it. She shook her head and tried to focus on her suitcase. Still, a whisper of fear curled in her stomach. Dinner was simple but hearty: roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and a steaming bowl of green beans. Harold's voice filled the room with stories of his youth, of farmlands stretching endlessly, of animals he once kept. Lily ate in silence for the most part, listening, nodding politely, but her mind kept returning to the basement door. After dinner, as shadows thickened outside and the house grew quieter, Lily's unease deepened. She followed Harold to the living room, where he settled into a high-backed armchair. The flicker of a single lamp cast long shadows across the walls, stretching the corners of the room into strange shapes. "Time for bed soon, Lily," Harold said kindly. "It's been a long day." Lily hesitated. Her small hands clutched the edge of the sofa. "Grandpa, I don't want to go to sleep tonight," she whispered. Harold raised an eyebrow. "Oh, why's that?" She pointed a trembling finger toward the basement door. I hear a lady crying down there. Please don't make me go to sleep." Harold's chest tightened. He forced a laugh, though it came out more hollow than he intended. "Now, Lily, you know that's just the house settling. Old houses make funny noises. No one's crying down there." Lily shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. "No, Grandpa, I hear her. She's sad. She wants help." Harold's heart thudded in his chest. The rational part of him wanted to brush it off, to tell her it was her imagination. But something in her voice, a sharp, insistent clarity, made him pause. For a moment he imagined the basement door swinging open, darkness pouring out, and the faintest sound of crying riding the draught. He knelt beside her, placing his hand on hers. All right, we'll check it out in the morning, okay? But tonight, you need sleep. I'll stay right here, promise." Lily nodded reluctantly, but her gaze never left the basement door. That night, as she lay in the narrow bed in the guest room, she could still hear it, faint, muffled, almost too soft to be real. A crying sound, sad and lonely, echoing from somewhere deep below. She pulled the covers closer, her small frame trembling, wishing her grandfather could hear what she heard. And in the silence of the old farmhouse, even Harold thought he might have, just for a heartbeat, heard it too. Anxiety night had fully settled over the farmhouse, wrapping the world outside in a quiet darkness that pressed against the windows. The wind whispered through the bare branches of the surrounding trees, carrying with it faint, eerie sounds that made the old wooden house groan and creak. Lily lay in bed, her blanket pulled tight around her small frame, eyes wide and alert in the dim glow of the bedside lamp. She wanted to sleep, she really did, but the sound from the basement would not let her. It started as a faint, almost melodic wail, like a lonely song echoing through stone and timber. Lily clutched her pillow, pulling it close to her chest. "Grandpa," she whispered, her voice trembling. Harold, sitting in his armchair near the doorway, turned with a gentle smile. "Yes, Lily, I hear her again," Lily said, her small hands gripping the blanket. "The lady down there, she's crying." Harold shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He had been expecting the house's noises to pass as harmless, but something in Lily's tone made him pause. It wasn't just a child's imagination. There was insistence there, a certainty that chilled him. "Honey," he said slowly, "sometimes old houses make noises. Pipes, the wind, the floorboards. Nothing to worry about." Lily shook her head, her dark brown eyes wide with fear. "No, it's her, Grandpa, she's sad. Please, you have to listen." Harold leaned forward, straining his ears. The house was quiet now, save for the occasional groan of settling wood. For a moment he heard nothing, but then a faint, distant wail muffled and trembling, reached his ears. He froze, heart hammering. It was unmistakable, a soft, sorrowful cry, faint as if it were travelling from the depths of the earth itself. Harold's rational mind battled his growing unease. Maybe it was the wind, maybe the old pipes had shifted, but deep down he knew he hadn't imagined it. "You hear it, don't you?" Lily's voice broke through his thoughts. Harold swallowed hard. Yes," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Lily's eyes lit up with a mixture of relief and fear. "She's real. You hear her too." "I hear something," Harold said cautiously, rising from his chair. "We'll figure this out, I promise, but it's late and you need rest. I'll stay right here." But Lily could not rest. Every creak of the floorboards, every draught that brushed against the window, made her tense. She imagined the lady in the basement, pale, tear-streaked, lost, trapped in shadows. She wanted to help her, to soothe her sadness, but she felt too small and too helpless. Hours passed. Harold tried reading an old book in the living room, pretending normalcy, but his thoughts kept drifting to the sound of that crying. He replayed memories of the house, searching for any explanation. He remembered the old basement, the rumours of Margaret, the stories his parents had whispered decades ago. A chill ran down his spine. He had never dared go into the basement himself. The crying continued intermittently, a faint echo beneath the floorboards. Lily shivered under her blanket, tears threatening to spill. She whispered to herself, "I'm not scared of you. You just need help." Harold heard her words and felt an unexpected pang in his chest. There was something about her courage, the innocence and determination in that small voice, that made his own fear seem trivial. But the rational part of him resisted. Ghosts weren't real. Spirits didn't cry in basements. Still, the sound persisted. Finally, Harold could ignore it no longer. He rose quietly and tiptoed to the staircase, trying to calm the knot of fear and curiosity in his stomach. He glanced back at Lily, who was sitting up in bed, eyes wide and pleading. "We'll check the basement in the morning," he whispered. "I promise. You're safe, Lily. Nothing's going to hurt you." But as he turned away, he froze once more. The cry had changed. It wasn't just a sound now, but a sense of longing, sorrow and despair that seeped into his bones. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. For the first time in years, Harold felt the walls of his familiar home closing in with the weight of something unseen. Lily hugged her pillow tightly, whispering a promise to the lady she could not see. "I'll help you. I promise. Don't be sad any more." And somewhere beneath the floorboards, beyond the locked door, the crying softened, almost as if someone or something had heard her words. The next morning, the farmhouse felt quieter than usual. The wind had dropped overnight, leaving only the soft rustle of leaves outside and the occasional distant call of a crow. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the dust motes that floated lazily in the air. But inside, the house held an undercurrent of tension, a heaviness that even Harold could not ignore. Over breakfast, Lily poked at her scrambled eggs, her mind elsewhere. Harold watched her, a frown creasing his forehead. "You didn't sleep much last night, did you?" he asked gently. Lily shook her head. "I kept hearing her, the lady. "She's so sad, Grandpa. I think she's lonely down there." Harold sighed, trying to mask his unease. He had spent the night thinking of explanations, the old pipes, the settling wood, even a draught, but he could not shake the memory of the faint crying he had heard. Rational thought collided with fear. Something about the basement had always unsettled him, but he had never admitted it, not even to himself. "All right," he said finally. "Let's try to find the source of this crying. But we'll do it carefully. Nothing scary, just a little investigation." Lily's face brightened. "Really? You'll come with me?" "Of course," Harold replied, mustering a small smile. The day passed slowly, each tick of the clock amplifying the unease. Harold busied himself with small chores, but his mind kept drifting back to the basement door. It stood silently at the corner of the hallway, heavier than ever, as if daring them to approach. Every creak of the floorboards beneath their feet sounded magnified, echoing like whispers from the shadows. Finally, as the sun dipped low and cast long skeletal shadows across the walls, Harold decided it was time. He motioned for Lily to follow him. Together they stood before the basement door. Lily's small hand went to the doorknob, but she hesitated. "Grandpa, it's so dark in there. Are you sure we should?" Harold swallowed hard. "We'll take it slow. Nothing can hurt us if we're careful." He pressed his ear against the door. A faint, muffled sob reached him, a sound so sorrowful, so achingly human, that he felt a cold shiver run down his spine. Lily's hand trembled against his, and he realized her fear was as real as the sound itself. "This isn't the wind," Harold murmured. "It's someone." Or something. Lily's eyes filled with tears. "See, I told you," she whispered. "She needs help, Grandpa." Harold searched the hallway for a flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness. As he opened the door a crack, cold, damp air poured out, carrying with it the faint scent of mildew and old wood. The basement stairs descended steeply, shadows stretching along the walls like reaching fingers. "Stay close," Harold said, holding Lily's hand tightly. The crying was louder now, clearer, echoing softly from somewhere below. It was sorrowful, desperate, but not angry or threatening. The sound clawed at something deep within Harold, a memory he could not name but felt intimately familiar. Step by step they descended into the basement. Each creak of the old wooden stairs made their hearts beat faster. When they reached the bottom, the room was vast, filled with old furniture draped in white sheets. Dust hung in the air, disturbed by their cautious movements. Shadows flickered as the beam of the flashlight danced across the walls. Where is she?" Lily whispered, her voice trembling. Harold's eyes scanned the room. There was no one visible, yet the crying continued, coming from somewhere deeper within the basement, as if it were trapped behind the far wall. He noticed a small, weathered chest tucked into a corner, half hidden beneath a sheet. Something about it made him uneasy. "This house, it holds secrets," Harold murmured. "Maybe it's been keeping something hidden for a long time." Lily clutched his hand, her fear mingled with determination. "We have to help her, Grandpa." Please, Harold hesitated. He had spent years convincing himself that the past should stay buried, that some doors should never be opened. But now, looking at Lily, her courage, her innocence, her empathy, He felt an undeniable pull. Whatever was in the basement, it was real, and it was reaching out to them. As he reached toward the chest, the crying grew louder, more distinct, almost pleading. Harold's breath caught in his throat. The air around them seemed to thrum with sorrow, a quiet, heavy presence that pressed against his chest. He looked at Lily. Her wide eyes were shining with tears, but she nodded, trusting him completely. And in that moment Harold understood. They could not ignore it any longer. Whatever had been hidden in this basement for decades needed to be seen, heard, and acknowledged, or it would never find peace. Harold and Lily spent the next day in a quiet, almost tense routine. The farmhouse seemed ordinary in daylight, yet the basement weighed on Harold's mind like a shadow he could not shake. He had always avoided it, claiming it was nothing more than storage, yet now its pull was undeniable. While cleaning the attic, Harold stumbled upon a dusty leather-bound box. Inside were letters, photographs, and a small journal, yellowed with age. His hands trembled slightly as he examined them. The photographs were of a woman he vaguely remembered hearing about, in whispers, during childhood. Margaret, a young maid who had worked in the farmhouse decades ago. The journal detailed a life of quiet suffering, loneliness, betrayal, and fear. One photograph caught Lily's attention. Margaret standing near the basement door, her eyes sad, almost pleading. Lily touched it gently. "Grandpa, she looks like the lady crying." Harold swallowed hard. The letters revealed more. Margaret had disappeared under mysterious circumstances, rumoured to have been confined in the basement after some family scandal. Harold's heart ached as he read passages of longing and despair, realising the woman's story had been buried deliberately, never spoken of again. That night, as shadows crept along the walls and the house settled into its usual creaks, Harold and Lily felt the basement calling to them again. The crying was softer now, more mournful than before, almost like a voice reaching for understanding. Harold finally admitted to himself, the past was not just a story. Something, or someone, was trapped, waiting. That evening Harold made the decision. The basement could no longer remain closed. The past could no longer remain buried. With Lily's small hand in his, he approached the basement door. The air was thick with anticipation. Each step toward the door made the house seem colder, heavier. The rusty key from the drawer felt unusually warm in his palm. His fingers shook as he fitted it into the lock. Lily's eyes were wide, a mixture of fear and courage, gripping his hand tightly. The key turned with a groan, and the door swung open to reveal a yawning darkness. Cold air rushed out, carrying the scent of mildew and age. Shadows pooled in corners, and the faint sound of crying echoed, more distinct now, almost desperate. Step by cautious step, Harold and Lily descended the creaking stairs. Dust swirled around their feet, disturbed by their movements. Sheets draped old furniture like silent ghosts. The crying led them deeper, toward a corner where a small chest and a worn chair sat, untouched by time. Harold's flashlight beam fell on the chest. Something about it drew him, as if it held the key to the woman's sorrow. The crying intensified, vibrating in the walls, in the air, in their chests. Lily whispered, "She wants to be found. She's been waiting. Harold's heart pounded. Fear, guilt, and curiosity battled within him. He realized the basement was not merely a room. It was a vessel of memories, of a life silenced and hidden. And now it demanded acknowledgement. Harold knelt by the chest, brushing away dust to reveal a small keyhole on its front. Lily crouched beside him, her hand lightly resting on his arm. The crying grew louder, almost pleading, as though urging them to open it. With trembling hands, Harold inserted the key from the drawer into the chest's lock. It clicked. The lid creaked open to reveal a collection of belongings, a worn diary, letters, and a small bundle of personal items Margaret had treasured. Things meant to comfort her in isolation. Harold picked up the diary carefully, opening it to the first page. The handwriting was delicate, neat, filled with sorrow and longing. Each word spoke of love, loneliness, and betrayal, of days spent locked away in the basement, of nights crying for understanding, for someone to notice her pain. Lily leaned close, her small face pale but determined. "Grandpa, she's real, and she wants someone to remember her." As Harold read aloud, the crying softened. The air felt lighter, less oppressive. The basement, once dark and foreboding, seemed to release a tension it had held for decades. Shadows flickered, then stilled. The sorrow in the air became quiet, almost peaceful, as though the act of acknowledgement had reached Margaret, wherever she now lingered. Harold felt tears prick his eyes. He had spent years avoiding the past, fearing it, burying it. But now, in the basement, with his granddaughter by his side, he realized that confronting it, acknowledging it, was the only way to honor the life that had been silenced. The basement no longer felt threatening. It was heavy with memory, yes, but it also held the quiet dignity of recognition, of a story finally being heard. And Lily, brave and empathetic, had been the one to guide him. Harold turned the fragile pages of Margaret's diary, his voice trembling as he read aloud. Lily sat beside him, eyes wide, listening intently. The words painted a picture of a woman who had once been full of hope, only to have her life trapped behind locked doors, silenced by fear and misunderstanding. She loved this house, Grandpa," Lily whispered. "But she was lonely and sad." "Yes," Harold said softly. His throat ached. "She was never meant to be forgotten." As he read, the crying that had haunted the basement all night grew louder, yet it no longer felt menacing. Instead, it carried a note of recognition, as if Margaret herself was listening, finally, to someone who understood. Lily stood, walking slowly toward the far corner of the basement, her small hands extended in a gesture of comfort. "It's okay, Margaret," she said softly. "You're not alone anymore. We hear you. We remember you." The air shifted. A faint glow seemed to shimmer near the corner, forming into the vague outline of a woman. Her features were sorrowful, pale, yet kind. Lily stepped closer, unafraid. She held out her hand. The crying stopped. Silence filled the basement, heavy and serene. Harold felt a lump in his throat. The lady, Margaret, was real in a sense that transcended the physical, bound to this world by pain and neglect. Yet Lily's compassion had reached her, bridging the gap of decades. Harold knelt beside his granddaughter, awed, You've done what I could not, he whispered. You've given her hope. The glow of the lady faded slowly, leaving behind a faint warmth, a whisper of gratitude that lingered in the air. The house was quiet now, but Harold and Lily lingered in the basement. The lingering tension had transformed into a gentle stillness, as if the very walls were breathing a sigh of relief. Harold reflected on his own fears, the years spent avoiding memories, the guilt he had carried over family secrets. Now, standing in the basement, he realized fear had been the cage and empathy had been the key. Lily hugged her grandfather tightly. "Grandpa, we helped her," she said. "She's not sad anymore." "Yes," Harold replied, voice soft. "And maybe we can let the past rest, finally." They moved through the basement, noticing the once ominous shadows now seemed merely echoes of time. Dust danced in the afternoon light, streaming through small windows. Even the creaks of the floorboards sounded familiar, almost friendly. Together, they placed Margaret's diary and belongings carefully on a shelf where they could be remembered, honoring her life. The act itself seemed to release a final, subtle sigh from the room, a lingering echo of gratitude. Harold and Lily had faced fear, not just the fear of ghosts, but the fear of confronting truths long buried. And in doing so, they had found courage, understanding, and closure. Morning light spilled across the farmhouse, warm and golden. The house no longer felt oppressive, no longer whispered with sorrow. Lily sat on the porch, swinging her legs, smiling in a way that seemed to reflect the calm that had settled over the old walls. Harold joined her, leaning on his cane. He watched her, heart swelling with pride and love. The basement door stood quietly, unlocked yet unobtrusive, a silent witness to a story now honored rather than hidden. "You were brave, Lily," Harold said, smiling. "You helped more than you know." Lily beamed. "We helped her together, Grandpa." "She's happy now." Harold nodded, feeling the weight of decades lift from his shoulders. The farmhouse, once a place of unease, had become a home again, a place where memories, even painful ones, could be acknowledged and respected. As they sipped their morning tea, Harold reflected on the journey. Fear had led them here, yes, but empathy and courage had transformed it into something beautiful. The basement, once a place of sorrow and mystery, was now a space of remembrance and peace. Lily looked up at him, eyes shining with quiet certainty. "Do you think she'll visit us again?" Harold chuckled softly. "Perhaps. But I think she's at peace now, and we have each other." The morning breeze carried the scent of the fields beyond the farmhouse. The sun shone warmly on the roof, and for the first time in many years, Harold felt the house breathe freely. The past was no longer locked away. It had been remembered, acknowledged, and finally laid to rest. Lily leaned against him, content, fearless, and full of hope. And Harold, watching the light dance across the fields, realized that some doors, when opened with care, could heal far more than they ever frightened.